Hi, um, I'm about to do a recording for someone who asked me to explain the circumstances of being unable to sleep and the importance of sleep and what it means. This method of explanation, by the way, is available to other people if you have a personal specific question that you would like me to answer. I'll answer it on a video as long as you understand that that video will be available for everyone. So this recording was initiated by Flavia, who I have her permission to use her name, and she's asked another question that was also posted. So I'm going to give this a shot and see how it works. She's experiencing the application of the protocol and the initial experiences of exercising peace in the sequence that we're describing. Now, for those of you who are not sure, the sequence we're referring to is the universal sequence of the flow of life force as it emanates through us in a 24-hour period. Or we also describe this as cycles and seasons, a cycle of a single day, a month, 3 months for a season, a cycle of a year. These are cycles and seasons. They're just rotations inside of rotations. There are many other ones, by the way. A heartbeat, the circle of a breath, average 12 to 14 times a minute. We cycle through breathing. We're always cycling through things. Now, if we stay on that general pathway of cycling and we want to maximize our ability to be able to grow consciously with intention to be in harmony with this rotation of divine beauty, perfection that is associated with a breath, a day, a month, a season, a year, a lifetime. It's the same rotating cycle. You can say it's holographic. That's one way of describing it. But this time period that we're referring to is linked to the understanding of sunset. Now, the significant part between sunset and midnight actually incorporates the experience of sleep. 6 p.m. is the beginning of the experience of the peace of the evening. It also corresponds to what we call the number 2 girl, which is the second daughter in a family, not to get too confusing, but it also corresponds to your mother's mother. But this position is the very first step into individuality from the origin of our reality as a pristine soul prior to incarnation. Let me say that another way. The human soul comes into the world from a pristine silence. From that pristine silence, there comes the peace that is the existence of the pristine soul just prior to incarnation. At the moment of incarnation, the very first step into matter is through the experience of feeling. When we take that peace with us into the first step, and we continue that link to peace throughout the entire sequence, we link peace to the entire cycle. If that cycle's in a breath, if that cycle's in an hour, if it's in 4 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, peace. The very first entry in that is the personal desire to feel one's own pristine soul. Now, this sequence between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. is actually the preparation of the soul getting ready to, in harmony with this pattern, by 8 in the evening, is already preparing to go from, as you well know, being vertical to being horizontal. The intriguing part about going horizontal, or if you will, going to sleep, is that we actually leave the body and go vertical. What I mean by that is, when we do aspire to bring our peace with us into sleep, to be in harmony with the sequence, there is a naturally existing component between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m., which gives us the ability to, if you will, let go of the material outside world, of the range of senses that we're familiar with, and then we go into the higher world, which also corresponds to galaxy, stars, universe, and so on. You might say we go from being horizontal while we're getting ready to go to sleep, then we leave the body, we go vertical, we go up through, if you will, the top of the head, and we're actually continuing our peaceful relationship to learn from the cascade of grace coming down through what we would call the sixth girdle, or the top. That means the skin, the pineal. So from 10 p.m. to midnight, we're actually engaged in being in the higher realms, where we are to experience the receiving of a divine infusion, maybe not much more, and I won't put a limit on it, by the way, not much more than the tip of a hummingbird's tongue touching nectar, because we get to bring a little bit of that divine nectar back with us, because at midnight now is a completely different pattern, because from midnight to 4 a.m., we're actually preparing to go vertical again. So at 4 a.m., we're designed to be awake. It's about the awakening period. Now, that awakening period between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. just precedes the rising of the sun. I know that sounds like a lot, and it is, because inside that cycle, there are other cycles, and one of those other cycles is the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is a sleep cycle, which means we have, well known in science, we have cycles where we do a deep dive into what's called the delta state. We come up, it's a 90-minute cycle, and we do 2 of these cycles before midnight. Really urge you to consider that both of these deep dives are very important, because you get 2 sips of nectar from the hummingbird tongue that you might have to receive the honey of heaven. So you get very important things on both of those cycles. Now, these cycles, they have to do with many different parts of functions. We won't go into the part how this backwashes the brain, this changes the body, this washes away dementia, this does many different important things as the cerebral spinal fluid goes into the brain and comes back again. Very important that you get these 2 cycles in. If you're not going to bed until 10 o'clock at night, it means you're in resistance to feelings. that you actually don't want to feel what you're feeling. If you're not going to bed until midnight, you're deeply in resistance to something in your mother's family. Now, if you have deep irregularities in sleep, it means you need to recompose the reality of your mother's family. Why? Because the circadian rhythm and the time period between 6 p.m. and midnight is all regulated by the mother's side of the family. And between 6 and midnight, it's regulated by 3 different grandmothers. Grandmother number 2, mother's mother, grandmother number 4, mother's mother's mother, and grandmother number 6, mother's father's mother. Those 3 grandmothers, they rule your ability to feel and your ability to let go at 8 p.m. and your ability to receive divine honey. Very important to be able to go through the process of transformation. Now, the very cool part of 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. is the ability to be able to wash your own heart for you, by you. I know that's odd because you're going to be asleep, but there is a desire to want to change. This is also the metamorphosis, going into the dark like a caterpillar to become a butterfly of heaven. So you're basically going through the dark night of the soul to be transformed in the higher levels. So yes, sleep is important. It's not necessary, by the way, to always be asleep, but it is necessary to let it happen to the best of your ability. So even if you can't sleep, it's better that you hold still and you allow yourself to feel the truth about the feelings that you're still denying. Now, the majority of the time, if you have difficulty going to sleep at night, it's usually an issue on the mother's side of the family. You might have some components about how your father's family perpetuates it, but the issue we're really looking for is how to resolve something very deep on the mother's side of the family. And that something is usually fear of abandonment, fear of not being loved, fear of being alone, fear of being out of control. And there's a whole series of other ones on that side. It's not necessary to go through the whole list of them. But the 4-girl function at 8 p.m. is designed to be an instrument for you to transform your own feelings and your mother's side of the family. Now, eventually, we'll talk about how the increase of number 2, which is the increase of the capacity to feel. Now, that increase of the capacity to feel is observable at sunset. Notice what happens at sunset. The range of your vision starts closing down. You see as far, the colors come off the evening, and now you're into a quieter focus, and here comes the peace of the evening. That experience actually increases and accumulates inside you, leading to incremental, but sometimes quite dramatic increases of a particular feeling. That feeling for me is called empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel the feelings of others. Well, you can take that feeling of empathy inside your own self and feel the feelings that were put there by others. Put there by your mother, put there by your parents, put there by her family, put there by your entire family tree, and ultimately likely going back to the mitochondrial memory 180,000 years ago? How many actual feelings have been imprinted inside you? So the first experience is the responsibility that you can exercise as you want to feel all the feelings inside you that belong to somebody else or you. Now, there is a huge difference in the feelings that belong to you that you put there versus the feelings imprinted in you by your ancestry, by your society, by your culture, by your race, by your religion. You have lots and lots of feelings imprinted inside of you. The cool thing is the next element of the 4-girl or 8 p.m. element is the ability to wash that. Later on, that's called forgiveness. That's called metamorphosis. That's called many different things. That's called letting go. That's called going beyond the past, not being connected to the past. Now, in the process of doing this, how well you do this is going to start being revealed by 4 a.m., which means by 4 a.m., you're intended to be yourself again and vertical. Now, I urge you to consider that if you have a hard time getting up in the morning, it's probably an issue with your own masculinity or your father's side of the family, where you don't want to engage in exterior function. The engagement in the exterior function begins at 4 a.m. It now accelerates at 6 a.m. with sunrise. So which means between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., you're actually doing something extremely important. You're integrating your actual free will and the ability to be able to make choices. That is to be your actual authentic self. If you have an actual desire to be your true soul, higher self, whatever you want to term it as, it really starts at 4 a.m. Now, you may find yourself waking up at 3:40, which I've done many times, or 3:20, 3:40, 4 a.m., and you go, here I'm awake. How come I'm awake? Well, you're awake because you're waking up. Stop fighting it. You're awake because you're waking up. You have a desire to want to be who you are. So even if it's only for 5 minutes at 4 a.m., you go, I'm awake. I would really suggest you say thank you and have a desire to want to be your authentic soul, self, whatever you want to call it as, right? Now then gradually you will find that the length of time that you'll stay awake gets a little longer. And then maybe you fall back to sleep and you're back awake at 5 or 5:30, then I urge you on that second time you wake up, get up. It would do you the greatest good if you just, that second time you're awake, go ahead and develop the strength of will, because right there at 6 a.m. comes sunrise. Sunrise is the empowerment of the thing you set in motion at midnight. What did you set in motion at midnight when you were asleep? Well, it was the thing that you aspired to at 8 p.m. What did you aspire to at 8 p.m.? The continuation and the acceleration of peace at 6 p.m., sunset. At sunset, you had a desire to want to feel more. And it goes all the way through the cycle. And guess what starts happening around sunrise? People. Whether it's the neighbor, the dog, the kids, the husband, the wife, whoever, the internet, and then comes the emotional adrenal fire. And now we start having these interactive emotional experiences, because guess what's going to arrive? the law of attraction. The law of attraction of what you set in motion at sunset the day before. Now, it's true that you already had law of attraction events coming to you from the month before or the year before. You have the law of attraction events arriving to you all the time, including 180,000 years ago about the evolution of mankind, or going back to the Anunnakis if you want. You have all kinds of things coming to you all the time. The question is what do you do when you're faced with an emotional triggered inflammatory moment at 9 in the morning? Well, when it arrives, what do you do with an emotional inflammatory moment? Do your best to remember sunset. Wow, that sounds weird. Remember sunset in the moment of being triggered? Yeah, it's easy to forget. Remember what you thought you wanted to be, is your true soul in peace. So if something coming at 9 in the morning, it's a trigger, you're not trying to avoid the anger. No, my suggestion is if you find yourself confronted with a triggered angry moment, invite it in. I know that's weird. Invite more of it to arrive, because the anger is actually revealing there's something you're not getting. That's basically what anger is. It says, I'm not getting what I want. Without knowing it, what you probably wanted was your addiction met. What you really need to look for is what's underneath the addiction. So the way to do that is go, show me the truth about this anger and every feeling like this I've ever denied. Show me all the anger I ever have felt. Yes, really? Okay, then as much as you want. Show me the truth about the feeling I have. Now that's how you handle no matter what time of the day it arrives. And there can be multiple ones, little ones and big ones, larger ones. But the issue is go back to the sleep cycle and remember, peace. Carry the peace from 6 p.m. to 8. Accelerate the peace by the willingness to let go of where you are for the purpose of receiving more of the ability to go into the future with greater magnitudes of peace. Then you'll bring that back with you at midnight. You wake up at 4 a.m., the higher magnitude of peace is there. It gives you a higher degree of the integrity of being your own self and free will. It gives you the ability to be able to make a choice and go into the next day until sunset. So, challenges with sleep, welcome them. Don't fight it. If you have a challenge with sleep, show me the truth about what I'm denying. And to help you do that, I'm suggesting that you just experiment. Take the peace, the difficulties, no matter what time it is at night, show me what I'm denying. And then during the next day, it's going to start arriving. So you have to watch what keeps coming the next day, because it's going to come in dozens of different ways to reveal to you why your sleep cycle is irregular. Now do your best, just do your best to gradually move your bedtime closer and closer to 8. I know that sounds impossible. If you have 2 or 3 kids and you're trying to get them in the bathtub and they won't cooperate, and you know how those kids are. And I remember they have this sudden burst of energy right at bedtime and they just want to play and move and all. And you just want the little buggers to get their bath and go to bed. And then you have to do all the rituals that you do. Do what you can. Be realistic. Try to get them to bed by 7:30 to 8 so that you can possibly go right behind them and go to sleep by 8 or 8:30 if you can. And then if you get them to bed by 8:30, they're usually going to be up by 5 anyway. Well, that's my memory. Maybe yours is different, but Kids have a way of waking up when they want. So this is about sleep. Give yourself the gift of 2 cycles of sleep before midnight. By that I mean 2 deep cycles of sleep on your circadian rhythm, delta bandwidth patterns coming up, 2 cycles. Because after midnight, you won't go into deep sleep again. Your sleep cycle will be on the top, and you'll be integrating for 4 hours. And some of that integration is in the dream state, but not a lot of it I would be concerned about. Just let the integration occur. And as you're landing, you'll have all kinds of different dreams, most of which are, just like distorted in some form or another. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. But the moment you wake up, have some input into what you want your life to be. Now, I would suggest that you remember that you started out the day at sunset with the desire to be your authentic soul in peace. Now, if you do that over a 24-hour cycle, that's good. If you do that over a month, very cool, because after 21 rotations of the sun, 21 days, it takes 21 days for the sun to rotate one cycle. The sun rotates 21 days. You now have that memory more embedded. If you add another 7 days, you're beginning to interface it into another level of memory. So at 28 days, one cycle of the moon, you've completed one cycle. 3 cycles of the moon's called a season. If you link 3 cycles of the moon together, 3 months together, you have now created a long-term memory with that degree of a sincere desire of peace to know your soul. 3 months. And then if you're really bold, you can do 3 cycles of 3. That would be 9 months, which is, a sacred number of 9 months. If you do that for 18 months, you're done. Well, Flavia, I'm not sure how much you actually got about this, but thank you for the question and the opportunity to at least illuminate a little bit more of this process. Oh, by the way, this is a soap bubble. I like it because it exemplifies the diameter of the human soul around the body. It's roughly an arm's reach in both directions, but now the bubble of peace. Well, you can decide for yourself if you want to do that. Talk to you later.